Hi, everybody. Welcome to second episode of the International e-seminars on contemporary issues in media and information literacy, organized by Moulay Ismail University and its Faculty of Arts and Humanities, the Research Laboratory L'Arcigals, and the research group on intercultural communication and conflict resolution. First of all, I would like to present my best wishes to all Muslims celebrating Ramadan. Ramadan Mubarak to all. Warm greetings to the attendees who have decided to register and to join us in this seminar. We are pleased to welcome them all, undergraduates and postgraduate students, young researchers and confirmed researchers and scholars from various parts of the world, and members of the general public who showed their willingness to learn more about media and information literacy. Welcome to you all. I welcome the speakers who will take part in this seminar and thank them for their participation. We have the honor to have today 3 young researchers who are at the same time confirmed practitioners in their respective fields of competence. Dr. Mohammad Sheikh Shamir from India, Afifa HASSAINATE from London, joining us from London, and John Ponceran joining us from the Philippines. Well, I see that the first speaker has not joined yet. So we will give the floor to Afifa as first speaker. He has not joined the Dr. Mohammad Shamir. So I will ask John to please present the slide of Afifa.
Okay, so I think first of all, definitely I would have to, and I would love to thank my dearest previously and still my professor, Drisia, and now my friend and everything else. I would like to thank my fellow speakers. Thank you very much for gathering together. I would like to thank everyone attending and registering to be here and seek for knowledge and new horizons and dimensions of our thoughts. And I guess I'll just have to go through it now. So yeah, as it was already mentioned, my paper would be on visual culture and gender, and I will be leading or going through Moroccan film as an example of this dimension of visual culture. So it is in this e-seminar, I'm gonna be speaking about visual culture and gender through Moroccan cinema, and I'll be talking about visual culture and gender in Moroccan film, and also how media information literacy can help make individuals and public opinion more aware of the rule of cinema or the rules of cinema. It doesn't have just one rule, it has plenty. In reconsidering positions and understanding gender position in society. I'll be going through several subtitles. I'll be obviously mentioning why am I choosing visual culture and gender, and then why also giving film as example. And then I would be speaking of films as in a social context, gender structure, image in Moroccan film. And then finally, my last point would be on the body and the vulgar image of this latter, especially in Moroccan films. So visual culture means all the audiovisual and visual works that the human, not to say man, so men or women, so human produces in a determined general context, cinema is one of the richest, most composed and creative elements of this visual culture. And this is why, basically, I chose to talk about it. And it is also the topic of my research, my academic research. So talking about film and gender within the context of visual culture is a choice, basically, mainly, and this is because or due to the strong influence of visual culture on mentalities and patterns of thinking and contemporary society. It is also systematically due to the universe, to the world, the structures and development of visual culture impact on cultural and artistic industries in general. Explaining gender, just in a nutshell, gender is a multidimensional concept by which we can understand relationship structures between men and women in a determined society. And here I'll be giving what UNESCO proposes as a definition of gender, which is quite important. Gender refers to the roles and responsibilities of men and women that are created in our families, our societies, and our cultures. The concept of gender also includes the expectations held about the characteristics, attitudes, and likely behaviors of both men and women, femininity and masculinity. Gender roles and expectations are learned. They can change over time and they vary within and between cultures. Systems of social differentiations, such as political status, class, ethnicity, physical and mental disability, age, and more, modify gender roles, obviously. The concept of gender is vital because applied to social analysis, it reveals how women's subordination, or on the other hand, men's domination, is socially constructed as such. The subordination can be changed or ended, of course. It is not biologically predetermined, nor it is fixed forever, hopefully. This is a hope that we all have, obviously. Now I will be trying to explain why giving film as examples of the visual culture. We will examine in this context and through analyzing the content of some Moroccan films, the characteristics of gender and the formula of its presentations in a summary, because we mechanically, of course, the characteristic of the reality where women and men live, even if the film tries to, I would say, rebels against these established satisfactions or criticize and advocates for women issues. And we notice this in plenty of films. I'll be later on giving some examples. But before, let's talk about film and social context. So each film in its representation of women in women's cinema has a social, cultural, and political context that is severely affected by it, especially in countries where there is not enough freedom of expression for art and artists. In democratic societies, of course, the situation is certainly different. There is more liberation of image of women and its situation in other contexts, obviously, where the woman is more liberated. In a stubborn male society where the slogan of parity is far-fetched because of the absence of equality first and under male watch, I can notice the imbalance of gender structures in Moroccan society, of course, to the benefit of masculinity, despite the many legislative, administrative, and human rights reforms that we are, of course, grateful and thankful for. But the paradox is, despite these reforms, we still see some imbalances happening, and this is obviously happening due to cultural constructs that is so strong, sometimes stronger than law, So this situation is clearly reflected in the structure of production and creativity in Moroccan film. Women film directors production and creativity in Moroccan film, they constitute a weak percentage among the number of male directors, and the dramatic stories devoted to addressing gender issues from an advanced structural and modernist perspective constitute a very weak percentage again for the benefit of partial propositions that make man the first rival of women and limit women's demands to daily and sectorial details that consecrate their inferiority and their weak position in society. Thus, it is possible to talk about an accumulation of images made by women directors in the past about women's situation and their position in front of examples of what women drew before and after the Arab movement for the second decade of this century, of course. Our aim is to distinguish them from previous movements that did not benefit of the current electronical social media and the widespread expansion of the phenomenon that we know nowadays, which is everyone has the ability or has become a producer of image. Because now with the phone, you can just record whatever and just call it whatever. And this is another issue that visual culture is dealing with as well. This situation is becoming extrapolate with the COVID-19 pandemic, of course, with everyone staying at home and everyone just recording everything. And just, it is quite, in a way, a mess, an intersective, subjective fiction, a reflection of multiple shapes and sensitivities, all expressing a multidimensional issue. We try to identify its implications of the representation of gender vision in some films made by men and women directors in Morocco. Now we'll move on to speaking about gender structure image in Moroccan film. So obviously, because the image is quite disturbed, then we are trying to, or correcting the gender situation in the structure of Moroccan society and liberating women from traditional discriminative culture seems to be the endeavor in Moroccan film in all its forms, levels and categories. This liberation is about equal and will not go beyond the slogan of the bidding unless it has become a daily reality and instills in mentalities and familiar behavior. The Scandinavian example and what is it achieved during the 1960s and the 1970s can be cited here as an example of liberation of Moroccan women's image, unless it made the primary education programs focused on equality of sexes through the common daily devoid of value judgments, image, text, and in the slightest of details. Examples now, the films, for example, Babs Maftuh, a door open to heaven, and Kid Nisa, the plague of women, by Farida Bilyazid, of course. محاكمة امرأة by Hassan bin Jallun, Hakim Nouri's Masir Mara'a, Majis Najjar with عيون جافة, Dry Eyes, Farida Burqiya with طريق ليالات, البحث عن زوج مرأتي, and of course Badis by Tazi Mohammad Abdurrahman Tazi, Nisa wa Nisa by Saj Shraibi, Dafair by Jilali Farhati, and the list goes quite long and amazing actually in many of them. All these films and others represent the gender situation structure in different forms and narrative contexts, both in terms of aesthetics or in the terms of the connotations and positions that reveal the Moroccan women position in society in general. Now, what are the most important characteristics of a woman's representation in these films based on the models that we presented above? I presented, all those movies, obviously, and many other more, and I emphasize on that. Above, about gender in visual culture context regarding her representation in the woman's body, violence against her, and man and women equality position in Moroccan society. Trying, or in an attempt to answer, or just to go through or open up this question more, not to say it's an answer and structure it. This is my next point, which is representing the body as a basis. So although women are very much present in Moroccan films, it is noticeable that their bodies are not as present due to the Moroccan in public spaces generally, I mean, a relative liberation of the body in general, or attempt of liberating it, of course. From objective censorship to self-censorship, the dilemma of fear of seeing free and proud women's body image on the screen remains an indication of this culture in our society. Is the statements of many actresses with the logic of pride. This image that does not repair or depart from two perceptions that are not different from each other in a decisive way. And now I will move on to my very last point, which is also trying to really elaborate in this big question that we still have, the vulgar captive image or body image. It is the body that is subjugated, repressed, and deprived, that represents a rapist and a captive with a view that makes it the desired, forbidden, and sacred, the lust of the morality profane. In the Moroccan film, it is related to the tragic body. It is impossible, therefore, to consider women's body as a human isolated topic in which the mind and intellect of her are integrated. There are many films, again, and here I would just say that all the films that I mentioned before, so we don't go repeating them all, and there are others as well that I didn't mention because, of course, of the time and everything. I don't want to go through other titles as well. So they all represent the free body, claimed by feminist Moroccan cinematic discourse. Free body is rarely encountered in Moroccan film, and only in the representation of women and men alike, defensively in the representation of women covered with paternal tenderness and making it groan, arousing pity. And if it displays something of its beauty in order to alert and condemn its will and denounce the culture and society in its regard, the majority of Moroccan film remain very fearful and tempting in dealing with the female body under moral justifications and justify in this context. As a sum up, or in sum, we are far from creative film that are based on the real creativity in looking at women and their bodies, surprisingly strong, rational and sentimental at the same time, largely as the evidence in artistic masterpieces. And here I will give examples of, for example, Jane Eyre, the French Lieutenant's Woman, The Portrait of a Lady, all these novels made into movies, or obviously Charlotte Bronte's, or Emily Bronte's, sorry, Wuthering Heights. So I guess that was it for the points I tried to tackle. Obviously, if there are any questions or any interventions with regards to my points, I'm still here. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Afifa. Thank you, Afifa. Sorry for this instability of the connection. We were pleased to listen to your intervention on the Moroccan women representation in a number of films. For sure, the liberation of the body is connected to the culture, and it is culture bound. So this is why there are all these limitations. So I did not introduce Afifa at the beginning. She is a writer, poet, interpreter, and film critic. She is a PhD candidate, researcher in visual culture and gender.
Thank you.
She is she is to have Dr. Shamir Mohammad from India with us as the speaker. Dr. Shamir has a PhD in journalism and a master in mass communication and journalism. He has at his credit 15 years in journalism industry, and he has at his credit 15 years in media television industry, and with particular reference to news production. And he has at his credit also a number of publications and research articles and papers presented at national and international conferences. We are honored to have you with us, Dr. Shamir. The floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you for this brief and kind introduction. Yeah, I'm sharing my screen. Yeah, is it visible?
Yes.
Yeah. Basically, just I'm dealing with the visual literacy pillars in news production. So, what is visual literacy? So, what are the elements elements and components which constitute visual literacy in news production? Just I'm going to deal this one. So basically visual literacy is a set of capabilities that allow an individual to efficiently find, understand, assess, utilize, and produce images and visual media. So as we all know, so an image is worth of thousands of words. So scope for visual literacy is facial expressions, body language, drawings, paintings, sculpture, hand signs, street signs, international symbols, layouts of the pictures, words in textbooks, different type of fonts, computer images, people producing still producers, sequences, and movies, video user, and friendly equipment, and critical analysis of visuals, television visuals. So visual literacy functions and differential responses. So visual literacy is not only a low-level skill of decoding symbols or recognizing particular images or well-known traits, but also functions on a higher level of visual competencies to make sense what is seen. So each of us react to the picture on the basis of our own sensitivity, culture, intelligence, mood, passion. So what is more? So the interpretation of one and the same photograph will benefit at different times. So media inclined to personalize complex events in an effort to make them both comprehensible and attractive to the target audience. So what are the components of visual literacy? So there are the three components: so the skills, knowledge structure, and personal locus. So in this one, so in the first one, skills, the analysis. What is analysis? It's segregation is a breakdown of visual elements. First, meaningful visual elements. So next, evaluation. So comparing this elements to the particular standards. So then next, grouping. So similar like visuals elements will be grouped in a particular set. So what the induction? Induction means a pattern putting into the set. So deduction means it's using the general principles to explain particulars in detail. So synthesis, what is assembling the in sequence? Assembling in sequence. So abstracting means clearly, just briefly, clearly, accurately depicting the visuals what we have just thought. So next, structure of the information. It will be two kinds. So factual means discrete bits of information such as names, peoples, places, characters, dates, status, distinctions, etc. So next, social means composed of accepted beliefs that cannot be verified by authorities. So next, this is the visual representation. So these are facts. So last year in 2020 February, Trump visited India. So it's a howdy Modi. It's a fact. So next, fact in this one, visual representation. So look at us attack on the crop. So when West Asia, it's, this insects fly from the north to from the west to the India. So this is a fact. So how it would focus and attract. Next, belief. So people in different in India, we have different cultures, different customs. So we have different beliefs. So beliefs means it's a particular. We cannot authenticate. So we say persons, individuals, persons or customs. So it will be related to one's individual. So we cannot authenticate. Next, personal locus. So it consists of goals drives. Goals shapes the information process tasked by determining what gets filtered in, what gets ignored. Next, strong device drive for the information. More efforts is needed to attain your goals, make conscious decisions. So this is the first in the personal locus. Just we have goals. So to achieve the goals, we need to put more efforts to reach our goals. So reach our what we have thought, we have to put efforts. So next, next thing is the visual literacy pillars. Visual literacy pillars. So we have these 5 things, 5 pillars. So visual communication, visual language, visual learning, visual perception, visual thinking. So this is all interconnected, interrelated. So I have just put in the diagram. So it shows that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So each one is related to one other. So it's one other is a visual communication related to visual language related to visual communication related to visual thinking, as well as visual perception. So we just give the brief about this visual pillars. So visual communication, what is the visual communication? Visual communication in ancient philosophers, used to use images to explain the particular things, and use it to teach and learn through visual images. So this is the next idea, concept, science, and graphical representation, illustrations, everything will be come into the visual communication. So it's semantics. So visual communication also symbols. So Om is related to Hinduism, and the crescent is to Islam, and the sword is to Sikh, and the crescent and the cross is the Christianity. So this is the way of the symbols itself represent the communication. So visual communication, what's how we can communicate the visual communication. So initially, we present the ideas, develop the concepts, and collect the ideas, put together, and then go for research, develop the brief, and final presentation of the ideas. Then refining the ideas. So after refining the ideas, so we obtain the feedback and modifications later. This is the communication, visual communication. So visual language, visual itself here speaks the language. So here we see the image. George Floyd was dead due to suffocation. So how the grim situation this image reveals. So this is image itself speaks the language. So one more image. So a drone Syrian boy highlighted Europe's refugee horror. So how refugees travel through the oceans, all the sea to reach the other destination in order to escape. So this is the shows the grim situation of the issue. Next, visual learning. So it's a personalized perceptual knowledge, encoding, storing, organizing, transforming, retrieving a spatial information about concrete objects and events. So common purpose of the pictures are to clarify, convey, describe, elucidate, entertain, explain, give perceptions, illustrate, inform, instruct, and mediate, present, show, and summarize the visuals. Visual perception. What is visual perception? Visual perception means what we see is a major part of what you know. The visual literacy can help us to see what we see, to know what we know. So strive to obtain more clarity. So visual perception, psychologist Saul MacLeod has we have 5 senses. Through 5 senses, we perceptualize concepts through environment. So what are the visuals through sight, sound, smell, taste, touch? So sensations refers to the physical stimulation of the sensory receptors. So involves interpreting this sensory information in an environment, in society. So next, visual thinking. So visual thinking is responsible for the majority of creative expressions. The ability to create, to be creative, to analyze, interpret, and present visual information, to communicate ideas in a visual form is a part of this type of intelligence. Visual thinking was not only about information processing, but also about knowledge of visual elements. Visual thinking is a pre-conscious metaphorical thought. It is the fusion of perception and conception, which results in the comprehension of visual shape and images. Thus, the perception is seen as a cognitive ability that is a legitimate intellectual ability. So, visual literacy tools. So, what is the visual literacy tools? So that will use in news production. So, languages of moving images, tools exist which imply creating meanings, such as camera, lights, audio, so including music, post-production, video editing, VFX. These are next set designs. So actors means here it may be reporter, so it may be presenter, it may be the particular narration of the story. So it will speak body language and costumes, so makeup, all tools of the visual communication. So camera angles reveal the characters' relationship to each other and their relative importance to the story. So color line, shape, composition within the picture frame suggests the ideas and emotions. Next, part framing. So most important thing in the news story coverage is the must particularly framing. So we generally select them in only fraction of the actual work to emerge within the photo frame while removing the everything else. So we have given certain we have the formed a particular idea. So but based on the particular idea, just we frame what we are going to shoot, what we are going to shoot, show the audience. That is the main framing. So visual frames presenting a three-level classification that mostly includes surface structure, mesostructure, and the deep structure. It was advocated by Geese and Gims in 2013. So surface, what is surface structure? Images are viewed by their visible characteristics such as aerial shots, full, long, mid, and close-up shots. So next, this is the framing. So this is the total frame. So it's a long shot. We're just covering the total area. So ideal procession, and the people are just watching from the distance angles, and they give them a wide angle perspective. So mesostructure. Next, mesostructure related to the quasi-market characteristics, symbolic frames such as the images of the American flag as a symbol of patriotism, and a stereotypical frames. And an example of this table would be a woman wearing the veil, being a stereotype as submissive. Next, deep structure. Focus on the characteristics of the image. This category includes perspective frames that provide the viewer a general perspective of the image, such as Abu Ghraib torture visuals, photos that shape the American public policy. So this is the whole theoretical background. So what are my experiences with this one? So with the framing, so we can just see the single event having two sides of the single event. So when covering a particular meeting, so we have to show one frame is one photograph is showing the people with less people, the other is more people. So if you want to show the particular event as successful, just will focus the frame to the group of people who are tightly settled in the particular frame. So just give that say huge people turn out to the particular meeting, political meeting. So here you can see show the success of the meeting. So here we scan people here and there, few people are there. So here we can see only less people. So here we can see failure of the particular meeting, political meeting. So this is the one way. So one more thing, we have a priority. So news channels have priorities. So while in 2008, I believe, yes, when Mumbai attacked by terrorists, so different angles has been showed. So one angle is the human interest stories. So the terror, one side is we showing the terror, the other side we are showing the human interesting stories, soft stories, and the victims who are trapped inside their relatives. So on the grim situation of the thing. So this is the priority, depends upon the priority, which angle we are taking up. So which angle we are focusing on to get our target audience. So what interests the people. So how these people just get influenced to a particular story. So it's have to be in human test. So depends upon the situation, depends on the issue. Political ideology means we have in a regional side, we have a political party support. On the national level, we have another political ideology support. So different ideologies will have to frame the news. Next, so the camera never lies. So it's absolutely so. In fact, it's become wrong. So here seen that the Capitol Hills attacked by protests. So here we see people just proceeding towards the Capitol Hill, so nearby. So we are see the we can see that there is it seems that Capitol Hills engulfed in fire. So it's not true. So only it's the dust that on the air. So it shows that when due to evening lighting, so dust which here focusing the like the flames, the smokes that emanating from the particular protest. So it's not there. So sometimes long frame will show, it will give them a wrong perspective also. So next, manipulation, yes, I told you. So protest. So what is protest? What generally what news channels, what people, this coverage, the news stories more often give revealing government versions of the particular event. So it will give government versions, less them, very seldom it will focus on atrocities. So major cases, it will give the side of positive side of the this particular version of government version of the version. It's give government versions only. So here manipulation. So on popular magazines, so here a soldier guarding, safeguarding the Iraqi people. So it's first two photographs shows two photographs, different photographs. So the below one photograph is merged one. So using the Photoshop, she has merged. So the particular photographer has been then again sacked because of the manipulation of the reality. So one more thing. So in National Geographic Channel, so in order to fit a photograph into on his cover page, it has just moving a pyramid to make a horizontal image of the pyramid. So it's given manipulation of this using the Photoshop. So conflicts and disaster also gives government versions only. So sets, what are the sets? So we have the basic literacy about how we develop the sets. So it will be suppose we are having the morning discussions, morning breakfast news. So we have to follow that theme. So particular theme. So suppose in the morning we have a little bit sun rays, yellow thing, yellow colors. It will dominate. So it will give the real ambience that person who is viewing, person we are watching the news, we should be feel that the ambience of the particular presentation. So it will give the real ambience also. So in order to suit to the real situations, we need to develop the sets according to the taste, according to the climate, according to the weather. So in order to attract the audiences, in order to focus. So one more thing. So anchor background. So anchor backgrounds and montages. So montages are sequence, putting a sequence of events in a particular sequence. It will got montages. So we have this different type of montage. What colors we are just using the particular montages. So it will give the montages means it will be different colors. The morning color different from the mid noon to evening, evening to night. So it's a different color combinations. It will use even generally we will use some in the morning, yellowish, and then evening is move on to evening. So we use some dark colors, dark blue, dark white. So this will give soothing atmosphere, soothing scenery beauty. So yeah, we have different cultures. So different cultures means it will have a different posture. Different dances has different unique attire. So to in order to present their dances in a particular culture, particular costumes. So costumes, so different costumes. In India, we have a different regions. So we have 28 states. Each state has its particular attire. So when we are covering the particular regional events, so the reporter has to be in a particular attire, so that can give the view close to the reality. So while covering this particular event, so it may be focus the particular event is come closer to the particular event. So then next is the presentation of the anchor, the makeover. So we have sarees to present to touch the Indianness, to touch the Indian culture. So we have just present news in our traditional dresses like sarees. So it also need to be considered which type of sarees, which type of dresses we have to pick up. So again, there's one more thing. Just we'll in visual literacy in the news production, we also consider also more. Makeover means headdresses also. So how it will look. It depends upon the individual particular presenter. So it has to stick to the particular individual's shape. So we need to crop that particular hairstyles also. So these are all give particular stress to particular things. So in conclusion, so digital technologies facilitate the manipulation of images as per one's will and wish and propagate their own ideology and philosophy. So this is my presentation. Rest here. So it's open for my questions. Anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Shamir, for this highly informative presentation. Thank you for bringing to us and revealing to us the world of news media and the world of news making in images. When we teach news literacy, we focus on the making of news, like the agenda setting and how news is made, because people have normally the conviction and they think that news refers to real events, to facts, like the saying which states that seeing is believing. People believe that the image, as you said, camera can never lie, and images reflect reality. So seeing should not be believing, and news is constructed like any other form of media. Thank you for making us benefit from your long years of expertise and practice as practitioner in the field of news media and news making. We will keep the questions until the end for the three of you. Now, the third speaker is John Ponceran. Are you available, John?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. This slide for you, please. For your presentation, your biodata. Yes, we are pleased to welcome the third speaker, who is also young researcher, but confirmed practitioner with 2 decades of practicing education for development and visual sociology. John Ponceran is a PhD candidate in the University of the Philippines, Open University. He has a master in public management, and he is a full-time teacher and head of development studies program in the Philippines. He has at his credit many publications, book chapters, articles in scholarly journals and papers. His paper today is titled Employing Critical Visual Sociology in Development Education, where he combines both critical social sciences and development education. Thank you for being with us, John. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Drisha Shuwit. Before anything else, I'd like to thank the organizer of this program, the second International Digital Seminar on Contemporary Media and Information Literacy Issues and Concerns, in celebration of the 10th anniversary of the Fez Declaration on Media and Information Literacy. It's an honor to be part of this panel along with Professor Afifa, Dr. Shaik Mohammad, and facilitated by Dr. Drisha Shuwit. My topic is on the employment use of visual social science in critical development education, specifically in development studies. Practically, we are existing in a world of images, from the design of our home to the emoticons we use to express our sentiments. As producers of media ourselves, visual literacy affords us to become sensible and sensitive in creating media content. As consumers of media texts, visual literacy enables us to critically analyze and evaluate the overt, meaning the obvious, as well as the covert, meaning the not obvious, messages that they contain. As a 21st century skill, visual literacy is indispensable in understanding, assessing, and creating images, as well as other visual representations. Of course, part of this is the theorizing aspect. It must be underscored that visual perception is one of the means by which we encounter and experience our physical and social worlds. As such, it is also through the visual dimension that we evaluate and investigate physical and social realities. For instance, to determine how clear, how numerous, how fearful, how sensual, and how incoherent things are. So that covers both the quantitative and qualitative aspect of the visual dimension. Ordinarily, we already notice the prevailing power imbalance based on the verbal exchanges of conversations between individuals. Let us say between a male and a female, or between an employer and an employee. But it is through the accompanying visual documentation that this can be further verified, analyzed, and theorized. Visual documentation allows us to see the power asymmetry, the power imbalance, as reflected in various forms of non-verbal communication, such as social distance, chronology or time dimension, clothing, as well as accessories, which have spatial and temporal dimensions. The manner by which an individual represents himself or herself visually in terms of his or her posture, fashion, hairstyle, and adornment reveal a lot about his or her socioeconomic class and sociocultural background, including his or her socio-educational as well as socio-ideological standpoint. It is also through these outward manifestations of social class, cultural heritage, and political standpoint that our socialization, social identities, and social interactions are organized, produced, reproduced, and even questioned. By virtue of these material embodiments alone, we are already communicating. Therefore, as underscored by Dr. Drisha Shuwit, we cannot not communicate. In communication and the social sciences, visual data are considered as texts that need to be analyzed and problematized. In development education, part of the social inquiry is confronting the taken for granted assumptions about development, underdevelopment, inequality, social exclusion, and poverty, as embodied in visual images, as well as in our tendency to be unreflective and uncritical in our perception about these visual representations. For instance, we look at cultural tourism as a form of cultural development, unaware of the legitimate issues pertaining to cultural appropriation and commercialization, commodification, objectification of culture, as well as the reality of rootless growth, which I will discuss later on. In another case, we sometimes get so enamored with a tourist destination or a tourist spot, not realizing that it has actually caused massive ecological damage and economic dislocation of people. The Bachelor of Arts in Development Studies is a multidisciplinary degree program which studies development and underdevelopment in the specific economic, political, ecological, technological, cultural, demographic, legal, ethico-moral context of the global south or the third world. It looks at the social condition of the marginalized sectors and identifies the structural causes, meaning the superordinate causes of their poverty, subalternity, and marginality. Through the adoption of alternative pedagogies or teaching techniques and participatory research practices, the program and its partner sectors formulate a transformative and community-oriented development agenda. The synergy or combination of the academic program's strong research orientation and the community's rich context and experience creates an enabling condition that is conducive to the promotion of pro-people development theory, pro-people development plan, pro-people development policy, and practice. In most of my classes, I would require my students to analyze and also produce editorial as well as sociological cartoons. We are already familiar with the editorial cartoons, and so I wish to focus my elaboration for this part on the sociological cartoon. Cartoonist Jess Abrera's outputs are excellent examples of this form of visual art, and it was sociologist Randy David who called it sociological cartoon. The conversation that transpired within the featured context, let us say in a public market, an electoral campaign, a school affair, or an office setting, mirror the motivation, the orientation, the positionality, the intentionality, as well as the struggles of the participants in the dialogue. So in this sociological cartoon, it highlights the nuances of the Philippine street food culture. Sociological cartoons are effective in capturing the nuances of a particular culture as manifested in their use of verbal and non-verbal communication. This one is an example of one of my students' editorial cartoon. This was submitted during their first year in college. The degree program where I teach required the students to integrate in the local farming, local fishing, and indigenous communities. Prior to community immersion, our major stake courses in development theories, poverty studies, third world studies, human ecology, community development, and social research, among others. In these courses, skills and values such as critical thinking, social analysis, engaged leadership, solidarity with the marginalized, ethical research, cultural sensitivity, and gender fairness are instilled and developed. In most of these courses, especially the first three in the list, visual communication is employed as teaching and learning strategy. Students are also required to attend an orientation program that covers the practicum protocols, local political and economic situationer in the community, sustainable agroecological principles and practices, since they will be immersing in the rural areas, as well as a lecture on audiovisual production for development. Skills in visual communication are indispensable in development research because the local community's material condition or economic condition or objective condition can be best captured, documented, and depicted in this dimension. However, the fundamental question of development research for whom, visual communication for whom, should be first answered. In other words, whose interest should development and development research primarily serve? Whose interest should visual communication primarily serve? Is it the ruling class? Is it the university? Or should it be the farmers and the fisher folks mired in chronic poverty? In the specific context of our community integration program, the production of images has numerous interconnected functions. Visual documentation captures the social realities in the community in its geographical, ecological, economic, political, and cultural dimensions. When presented in school through photo exhibition and audiovisual screening, it contributes to the heightening of the students' level of socio-political consciousness and the sharpening of their capacity for issue analysis. And when shared to other similarly situated communities or communities in the same marginalized conditions, the people realize that they have common struggles for social justice, human rights, asset reform, and sustainable livelihood that they must collectively fight for. Over the years, I have noticed that the photo exhibits would revolve around the following themes and sub-themes, namely production work in farming and fishing communities, natural environment or ecoscape, educational discussions or EDs, social assemblies with the community members, as well as the social mobilization or SOCMOB, and community organizing activities, CO. Specific subjects would include vegetable farming, crop harvesting, actual fish processing, selling of farm produce, and in-depth interviews with farm workers and fisher folks, no, such as this one, no, from Mindoro. Oftentimes, there are also sectoral focus on women, youth, elderly, as well as the indigenous people. Again, no, specifically that is the case, no, for this photo, no, where they are interviewing indigenous people, no, from rural Luzon. The visual dimension of studying development and underdevelopment can be applied to both quantitative and qualitative research. In the quantitative aspect, for instance, the development researcher or the media researcher can count the number of times or duration, no, measure the duration when women appeared in the photos or videos in the field of, say, civil engineering or architecture. The result of the frequency analysis can serve as an indicator of the women's sector's active participation, limited participation, or non-participation in economic activities that are traditionally dominated by men. For the qualitative aspect, the photo and videos can reveal the multiple burden in the lived experience of women as depicted in the visually documented social environment. Example, just imagine this, by observing women who are attending Zoom sessions while also taking care of their children and performing other household chores, and by also paying careful attention to their emotion as expressed in their facial expressions. Studying poverty and underdevelopment from the visual dimension allows the scholar researchers, the media researchers, the communication researchers to better understand the material and non-material aspects that surround the deplorable state as captured by visual documentation. Through visual imagery, we can depict the five forms, no? The five forms of undesirable growth according to the United Nations Development Program, namely jobless growth, voiceless growth, ruthless growth, and futureless growth. Applying critical visual sociology in the rural setting, jobless growth can be shown in a photograph of a rural worker losing his or her job due to the adoption of capital-intensive production techniques, which relies more on technology than human labor. Voiceless growth can be presented in a photograph of rural women being marginalized in the process of policy making and decision making, as shown in their limited participation or absence in public hearing. So in this case, women are reduced as decision takers, no, instead of being decision makers. Ruthless growth can be captured in a visual imagery of big commercial fishing sector lording it over the fishing grounds of the disadvantage of the marginalized municipal fisher folks, no? So ruthless growth in this context, no, refers to the ever widening gap, no, between the rich and the poor. Ruthless growth can be manifested in a visual image of an indigenous community slowly losing its identity and heritage due to the strong influence of the mainstream Western culture. And lastly, futureless growth, which has an ecological dimension, can be captured by a visual documentation of a plundered local ecology brought about by irresponsible and unsustainable mining practices. So all taken into account, all these five taken into account, no, leads to meaningless growth. A visual documentation provides scholars, media researchers with a veritable mine of information about the local community's way of life or culture. As a qualitative social research strategy in the multidisciplinary field of development studies, the visual communication approach, no, the visual communication approach necessitates sociological imagination, ethnographic skills, and political analysis. For this part, I shall focus only on sociological imagination. Sociological imagination, as applied to visual literacy, allows us to see the dialectical interplay of micro, meaning personal biography, and the macro realities, meaning the social structures and processes, in making sense of our social world. For instance, the invisibility or absence of even a single woman in a photo of a village assembly, which is a personal experience, would reveal to us the prevalent patriarchal culture and structure in the traditional society, the macro reality. Sociological imagination, therefore, enables us to understand the interplay between the individual and the family experience with that of the broader social patterns, interaction between our private troubles with that of the broader social problems, and the need to employ structural solutions in tackling, in solving, in dealing with structural problems. A photo of a poor rural family with a plundered environment as a context or background, literally and figuratively, fully captures the sociological imagination's juxtaposition of the micro with the macro, personal troubles with the social issues, and the need to initiate long-term, sustainable, structural solution for structural change. Visual documentation also affords us to identify the patterns and change, the patterns of change and continuity over time through socio-historical analysis. These patterns can either be desirable or undesirable. For instance, a photo or video documentation of an agricultural area would reveal the extent of how it has been drastically transformed through massive land use conversion over the years. In the specific context of many rural communities, it will expose how the vast rice fields were converted in unsustainable ways and at an alarming rate into real estate subdivisions, posing a serious threat to ecological integrity and food security. It can also reveal that many housing units actually remain unoccupied because of the unaffordable price. All these visual imageries would reveal the interrelated issues pertaining to efficiency, effectiveness, economy, and equity. Photo elicitation is a collaborative data gathering approach that requires skills in visual communication and in-depth interview. Students may adopt this interview technique in conducting participatory research in marginalized rural and urban communities. And most of my students in development research, which is equivalent to their thesis, adopt photo elicitation as a qualitative research technique. By showing the interviewees a set of images, the development researchers, the media researchers, are able to gather data and insights from the comments and reactions elicited from the rural and urban poor respondents or interlocutors. When conducting a focus group discussion or FGD involving participants from an urban poor community, we may include the following visual images in the photo elicitation technique. Example, makeshift housing, a photo depicting the lack of basic social services, food supply, water supply, among others, a photo depicting a place which poses a public health risk, and the actual demolition of informal settlements. An alternative and a more community-oriented and collaborative visual literacy approach is the photo voice, which is also known as subject-generated imagery or auto-ethno-photography. In this approach, the members of the community being researched are given the opportunity to use the available documentation technologies such as photographs, photo camera, video camera, to take the photos or videos themselves. So this would require teaching them the technology, introducing them to the technology, providing them the know-how. This transformative qualitative research technique allows the research subjects, allows the members of the communities to determine and capture through photography or videography the aspects and dimensions of their community lives that make sense and valuable to them. So it is not for the researchers like us, it is not for the scholars like us to determine what should be covered, what should be documented, and what aspects of their lives make sense to them. Photo voice is an empowering approach in promoting and enhancing community communication. In this context, it is not a coincidence that the words community, which came from the word communis, which means common, and communication, which came from the word communicare, which means to share, have the same etymological roots. Linguists would say that they are actually cognates. Community communication strengthens the people's solidarity in pursuing a common cause, a shared cause, shared situatedness, such as the struggle to achieve food security, shelter security or home security, health security, water security, financial security, economic security, political security as part of the human development agenda, as part of the wider democracy project. Another effective qualitative data gathering approach is the body mapping technique. By pointing at the specific body parts of your illustration, for instance, a drawing, or a schematic diagram, you may ask the respondent or your interviewee particular questions that pertain to what they have thought, to what they have seen, to what they have read, to what they have heard, to what they have smelled, to what they have talked about, to what they have eaten, to what they have touched, held, walked through, stood upon, and slept on in the community. This can be rendered in an illustration featuring the body parts and their corresponding experiences. The development researcher, the social researcher, the media researcher may categorize the questions into positive or negative form. For instance, what something desirable have you seen that day? That's positive. You can render that in the left or right side. Corollary to that, you can also ask, what something undesirable have you seen that same day? In the context of a highly militarized community, that fateful day would have led the respondents to hear gunfires, smell burning objects, and see evacuating disoriented families. Again, the ethical consideration of securing free and prior informed consent, or FPIC, before any data gathering activity is non-negotiable. So in this illustration, I required the student to do a review of a review of the related literature featuring the life and struggle of construction workers in the Philippines. And the entries that you will see here are part of their literature review. Hence the in-text citation. So in doing the body mapping technique, this can be in the form of this exercise, RRL, or the adoption of body mapping technique as a data gathering tool for qualitative research. And to end, allow me to provide this set of recommendations. Based on the foregoing, I have formulated the following recommendations to further enhance the use of visual social science, visual sociology, visual anthropology, visual ethnography in development education, as well as in the other fields of inquiry and practice. Include visual social sciences in the research methodology syllabus, more specifically in the qualitative dimension. Collaborate with the communication, media, and humanities departments to encourage knowledge sharing and interdisciplinary research among scholars. So the trend now is towards interprofessional collaboration, interdisciplinary collaboration, transdisciplinary collaboration, transdisciplinary engagement. Include translation of titles, subtitles, and captions for broader audience reach. Ensure the mainstreaming of research ethics in all courses to promote doing good, the principle of beneficence, and avoiding harm, the principle of non-maleficence, to vulnerable individuals and communities. And lastly, to stage the photo exhibit and screen the audiovisual production in other localities and institutions to encourage a more sustained reflection, dialogue among sectors and groups, as well as collective reflective action. So that ends my presentation on employing visual sociology in development education. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John Ponceran, for this highly informative and highly relevant to contemporary issues in media and
You,
information literacy. You have brilliantly shown the practitioner side as well as the young researcher side. I enjoyed greatly this presentation on applied visual sociology to development studies. Applied visual sociology to development studies, a research based on 20 years experience as development educator, combining both classroom instruction and community immersion practice programs for students. You have tackled a range of visual literacy approaches, mainly Stuart Hart's encoding and decoding model, and a large visual data applied to social documentation of disadvantaged segments in society. We support you in your advocacy for visual literacy for development and for the inclusion of visual literacy in the teaching learning processes as a mandatory skill in the 21st century education. Your study on poverty and underdevelopment, I commend your study of poverty and underdevelopment from the visual perspective. And I highly appreciate that you put your finger on the 5 forms of undesirable growth. You have enlightened us on using visual literacy for development, social justice, and social change. Your recommendations are well-grounded and should be taken into consideration in future research and future actions aiming to empower citizens using media and information literacy. Both you and Afifa have raised the patriarchal culture, but it is also a component shared by Dr. Shamir, because we cannot not talk about the cultural values of news. So to the 3 of you, if you can be very brief to say some words on the importance of context and importance of culture in all these aspects of visual culture and visual literacy. And to the 3 of you, I would like you to say a word on the difference of between vision and visuality and how it impacts all these different fields. And to the 3 of you, I propose to find ways and means to work together in order to prepare a comprehensive work for teachers on visual literacy. You, John Ponceran, you tackled it from the development aspects from sociology. Dr. Shamir, you tackled it from the perspective of news production. And Afifa, you tackled it from the perspective of films. But all these are interrelated, and as you rightly stated, we live in the epoch of interdisciplinarity and cross-disciplinarity, and this is an area of research and an area of practice which is open to all of us. So please be brief as possible, because we have to close up. Thank you. Anyone, you can start, John or Afifa or Sheikh Mohammad, at your ease. Please, John, start. John? John Ponceran, yes, please.
Yes, I propose, no? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I propose that in studying media, no, it has to be culturally situated.
Yeah.
No, in studying media, in studying development, no, in studying visual culture, it has to be locally rooted. No, because as I have seen, no, because of our over familiarity, you know, with the things around us, we become oblivious, no, negligent, no, of
You are
their.
fully right. You are fully right. We should always bring to the consciousness all the things that are in our subconscious and to which we do not pay attention, and but they direct our way of seeing and our way of behaving and even our way of thinking. Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, ma'am. And in that context, no, we have to be also multidimensional in our analysis, no. If the situatedness is local, we look at the political economic dimension, we look at the sociocultural dimension, we look at the human ecological dimension, and human ecology, I think, is the not so it's not given so much emphasis, no, in the discourse, no. Human ecology pertains to the relationship of human to other human organisms, no, fellow humans, no, the relationship of human to other living organisms, no, and the relationship of human, no, to the built structure, namely buildings, bridges, etc. So it has to have that encompassing look, no, from the human ecological standpoint, no. The idea is to not center only on the anthropocentric tendency of looking at things, no. Instead, no, we factor in our intended and unintended impact, no, to our environment, and part of that, no, is being gender sensitive, no, culturally sensitive, and ethical, no, in our production of materials, no, in our educational, no, and instructional materials such as textbooks, uh, curriculum development, among others.
Well, congratulations. Go ahead. It
That's
is
it,
very
ma'am.
interesting, and we still have a lot of work to do in this field. Afifa?
Yes. I just managed to get it because the connection was cutting off, but the question I just managed to gather it. So basically, I think that visual literacy, teaching or informing citizens or people in education of it, was that the question, first of all, Madame Desier?
Yeah, the cultural
Just so
dimension
I'm
and
well
context
oriented.
in dealing with all these types of visual literacy. They are all context-based and all
Yeah,
cultural-based.
okay.
And even in the news, we have the cultural values of news.
Of course. So yeah, it is absolutely important. It is absolutely crucial and so central and needed in a way, especially in unfortunately our would we say our countries being developed, so we don't say underdevelopment countries. But the issue is in education, like for instance in Morocco, as we always know and we always say, there is not much teaching of criticism and teaching people to question what's in front of them, and they already don't have a background.
The critical thinking
they don't have
skills.
a background to question and to. Most of them, they just want to be spoon-fed and to just take anything for granted. That's why, for instance, like now it's Ramadan and we see those programs on TV. That's not obviously cinema, that's TV programs where things are given for granted. Everything, even very important culture constructs are given for granted, and people are just taking them and it's going deeply and deeply. So teaching media literacy, visual literacy, understanding and comprehending these topics are very important. We really hope that people would be paying more attention and governments would be paying more attention to this kind of education.
Yes, all together we will succeed to make a move and to make a change. Thank you,
Hopefully.
Afifa. Dr. Shamir?
Yeah, basically it's visual literacy makes us, people aware of the news, aware of the values of morals and ethics. So how is news is making and how society, all its visual literacy will keep up and develop the society as a whole. It gives scope and attention. So get the things how it's happening and how it is developing. So how it really put in a particular way, so that can easily grasp, understand what is the motive and what is the intention behind that every visual. So that will explain and give some sort of a language itself. So that it's easy for understand that if you visual literacy gives a power to so analyze what is convey, what is the intention of the what is message is intended to convey, so how it is conveyed, so what is the importance to the society, to the nation and development of the human being. So it will give scope to the all-round development.
Okay, thank you very much. In fact, the visual literacy is so important because we live in a visual culture. But unfortunately, this is practically absent from all the curricula. We have to include visual literacy and media literacy and information literacy, visual literacy as a key component in media and information literacy. Of course, with the focusing and highlighting critical thinking to empower citizens, not only to understand, but also to be involved in society, to be engaged in society, and to participate in the social change and to participate in the development of society. Thank you all for this very wonderful, highly informative session tackling various aspects of visual literacy. Afifa, if I may say a word, I do not know whether you would allow it or not, but I just want to congratulate you on another issue. Wishing you good luck because you do not know that Afifa will be having her baby very soon. And we are happy for you. We are waiting to get the good news. We wish you
Thank you.
the best of luck. I did not know that you were expecting a baby when I invited you.
Well, it's obvious.
Well, congratulations for being
Thank
able to
you.
make it, to prepare the research
Thank you very much.
article,
Thank
and
you.
to be present
Thank
with
you.
us. I wish you all the best. Please keep me informed. And congratulations both for the
Thank you.
presentation and for the baby.
Yes, thank you very much. Like sorry, let me just make one point, a small one. Mr. John earlier mentioned the struggle that women have. Like you are in a Zoom meeting and nobody really knows, like, you know, what you're like. Right now I'm talking like earlier and the baby was basically kicking and I still had to talk. So cheerio to all the women out there.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you.
All the women. Thank you very much for making this session on visual culture and visual literacy successful. We will keep in touch to work together and to raise awareness about the importance of visual literacy in our education, but also in our everyday life. Wish you all the best and thank you for being with us. See you in another session of the international seminars on media and information literacy. Until then, stay safe and stay media and information literate. Bye-bye. Thank you very much to all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.